every trick that Minecraft pros use. So if you're a pro, let's see how many of these you do. And here's also how to do them. Chorus fruit is a tough food source to justify, and not because of anything with the saturation, but because of the teleportation. And usually it's just too risky to use this when you're not trying to teleport somewhere. That is, unless you eat one of these underwater. Strange as it may seem, by just putting yourself underneath a body of water, then you can eat as much chorus fruit as you want without ever having to teleport from that place. And I don't know why this happens, but I'm also not going to question it if it means that I can survive in the end. If you're looking for a quick way to the mountaintops, then cake horse ladders work plenty fast. I mean, in the past when we tested the fastest way to sky limit, this method ranked up in the top 5 best. But now we can make this staircase even faster through the help of dripstones. By alternating between dripstone and partially eaten cake, we're able to get an even steeper incline that lets us climb up at some crazy speeds. Sure, it's gonna take a while to get all the resources to do this, so if you're looking to eat a bunch of cake, then this investment's gonna pay off. And it's also the perfect combination of weird and practical, which that alone is worth a try. Skeleton spawners are a valuable asset to have on hand, but we're now able to upgrade this good thing into something even better. Now, by adding in powdered snow, we're able to turn our skeleton farm into a stray spawner. Now, you might ask why we would do this, but it only takes one look at the loot table comparison to see just how much these slow skeletons can drop. And that's all upsides, folks, especially when all it takes to make the change is just some powdered snow and cobwebs. And at that point, it's a no-brainer. Stop using a regular hoe to farm your crops, since by just adding fortune to that same tool, that'll drastically increase your drop rates of crops when you harvest them. And that's also not the part that wastes the durability of the hoe, making this even more efficient and cost-effective too. When you see an exploding creeper, what do? Yeah, I'd run away too, but let's say that's less of an option here. And if you don't have yourself a shield, don't worry, because if you just have a block and you place it between your feet and the creepers, that'll prevent next to all of the damage that you would have taken from the blast. Since the way that Minecraft calculates explosion damage, it's based off of a ray that's cast from the creeper to the bottom of your hitbox. In this case, our feet. So if we block that off, we'll take way less of the damage. And this will also work for things like TNT and end crystals too, regardless of the block, might I add. Even with the new glow lichen on the walls, lighting up these caves is still a mega task. So why don't we try night vision potions instead? Though that's got its own issue. Potions don't stack, so they're gonna take a lot of room. So instead of sacrificing storage for bottles, why don't we just use night vision arrows instead? After you craft a chunk of these, you can simply hit yourself with a dose and get right back to exploring. Sure, it's a bit more painful, but that's a small price to pay for seeing in the dark. And a stack will give you plenty of time to do that. A lot of players will argue between using things like steak or golden carrots for food, but if you got the time to craft it, I'd actually say that suspicious stew is the option. Since you're just a dandelion mixed in with your traditional mushroom stew, you only have to eat one of these to fill up your entire hunger bar. And not to mention, since it does it through the saturation effect, you're also going to heal pretty well off of this too, making this indispensable for PvP battles. You know what pros do? Dig straight down. I'm being completely serious. But they don't do it like this. So if you want to make digging straight down into a totally safe operation, then all you gotta do is just stand in between 2 blocks like this and then dig both of them down one at a time. That way, if one of the 2 holes leads you into a lava lake or a ravine, you'll still be standing on the other one safe. And yes, that's your cue to stop digging straight down. Though if you were a real pro, you wouldn't dig down at all. At least not yet. Since if you were to instead spend your time looking for things like shipwreck and buried treasure chests up on the surface, you'll have a much higher chance of getting diamonds for your rewards. I mean, in one of these buried treasure chests, there's a 59% chance that you'll find at least 1 to 2 diamonds, which is a lot better than the 0% chance that I seem to have of finding any down in the mines by myself. I'd rather take the easier option. Auto-clickers are great for AFK, but they're also not vanilla. But that's fine, we actually have a way to get an auto-clicker inside of the regular Java game. See, if you press F3 and T at the same time that you're holding down your left mouse button, then after the textures reload, the game will still think that it's registering the input, even though my hands are completely off the keyboard. But as far as Minecraft knows, I'm still there mining away all of the cobblestone at my stone farm. So if you're just starting out in something like a Skyblock world, this could be a way to get some early game resources. And then you can come back to your computer and actually play the fun parts. If you need to get a lot of sand and you're not allowed to use a sand duper, then we should take a page out of Etho's book. Since by just running in a line with TNT and a flint steel like this, you should know that for every TNT block that we're setting off, we're getting nearly 2 stacks of sand per. And folks, it only takes 4 sand to craft the same TNT. And sure, we're spending sand to get sand, but with returns like this, any investment broker would tell you to make it. And the only thing you gotta look out for here is placing down too much TNT to where all the sand that's dropping actually starts to despawn if you forget about it. But as long as you remember to take breaks to go pick some of that up, you're gonna get a lot of returns this method. If you've ever built with blocks that have an orientation, you're well aware that they're annoying to replace midair. So to fix that, we should mention that it's actually possible to just double click the left click and the right click button at the same time. And as long as you instantly mine the block, you'll be able to change the rotation location without placing any support blocks for it, which can be great for correcting your mistakes that you placed on that stairs for the roof, or even just for rotating your bamboo right so that it looks good for the window. And as long as you got the right efficiency tools to do this, it'll save you a lot of time. How do you craft your diamond tools? I know that sounds like a silly question, obviously you just craft them based off the recipe, but how you lay out that recipe could change. And taking a page out of Mysticat's book, what we could do is put all of our materials into the crafting recipe in just one step. So then, first we craft the pickaxe, then the hoe, and finally the shovel. And you could do the same for armor too. And when you're in a dire situation like a PvP tournament, this little bit of a time save could be great for you, especially when your opponent's also trying to get kitted up themselves. This way we can equip first and be able to deal with them that way. You know what's one of the fastest ways to travel in Minecraft? And I'll give you a hint, it's nothing like an Elytra or an Iceboat Highway, but really one of the fastest ways to travel is just using spectator mode. Since when you change your scroll wheel up to the max speed, we can start going incredibly fast, especially vertically, or scroll it all the way down and move at a snail's pace, which is great for fine-tuning your location if you need it for a specific command or shot. And really, if you're able to play with creative mode, there's no reason that you should ever be moving around in just the creative mode like this. If you need to cover a lot of distance, just toggle yourself into spectator mode, move over, and then toggle back to creative. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of time. Minecraft villagers are stupid. I would wait for a gasp from the audience, but I don't think anyone's offended by that statement. And unfortunately, they're also pretty useful with their trades. So to keep your villagers alive for the next time that a zombie siege might happen, you should know that through the help of a dispenser, you're actually able to equip armor into their secret inventory. And sure, you can't see it rendered on top of the villagers, but if you give them armor that's enchanted with thorns, then you can punch them and definitely tell that it's still there. And that way, you give them a way to defend themselves even if they don't have the iron golem anymore, since we usually tend to kill those off for other reasons anyway. Stop killing animals like this. And no, that's not a moral argument, but we're actually gonna suggest is so much worse. But if you use a flint and steel to burn the mob before you kill it, then when you use your axe or a sword, it'll still drop a cooked version of the meat item. And there you go, just for the cost of a flint and an iron, you give yourself 64 chances to get cooked food this way, and never have to waste anything on furnaces or fuel. And perhaps the most valuable resource that this saves you is time, since cooking up a pork chop regularly would take 20 seconds in the microwave, whereas this is just as simple as killing them the first time. And once you get it down, it's gonna feel second nature, so better start getting that learning curve out of the way early. Did you know that ladders can be useful in PvP? Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but there's one very specific feature about ladders that makes them indispensable in certain situations. Take a look at this. If you place down a 3-block tall wall, and then place ladders on top of it, then you can place blocks off of the ladder behind you without even looking away from it. And if you're playing something like Bed Wars where you're walking on very thin bridges, that little bit of a roadblock could be all it takes to knock your biggest enemy into the void. So while speed bridging and towering might look cooler, it might not be a bad idea to also buy a few of these ladders. It only has to save you once to be worth it. If you're playing on a hardcore single player world, this could be one of the most useful tips in the video. See, when you're in a difficult situation and about to die, then instead of just pressing the escape key to pause the game, press F3 and then the escape key. That'll still pause your single player world, but the menu won't appear. And now you have full vision to be able to analyze your situation. Is this cheating? Well, I'll leave that for you to decide. After all, it is a single player world, so it's literally never gonna have anything to do with me. Stop using arrows in PvP, since you really should be using fireworks. Now, not only will these deal more damage on impact, but they're also a great way to disorient the player. Think about it, you're running into a combat situation, and now all of a sudden you got candy-colored lights filling up your vision like a Christmas tree. It's the closest we have to a smoke bomb in Minecraft. And plus, if you manage to kill someone while they're inside of a firework, I think that just adds insult to injury. If you got resources but you don't have a lot of time, then I should let you know that if you wanted to tame a horse, you could do it instantaneously. It's just gonna cost you 10 golden apples, which I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it, that's obviously more expensive than just taking the time to do this, but that's why it's something that only pros do. The Wither isn't an easy fight, especially on Bedrock Edition, but that's only when you spawn it like this. Since if we were to take our Wither and put it horizontally, underneath the return portal in the end, it'll be trapped inside of the bedrock, not able to harm us or anything around us. It doesn't even leave a big explosion like it usually does. And at that point you could kill it yourself, or you could summon in a couple of iron golems nearby and have them do the job for you. Or my personal favorite way of using that same iron to place down this Hopper minecart entity cramming killer. It might be a little loud, but it definitely gets the job done. This is one of the most useful features in Minecraft, and it's off by default. But when you go into the accessibility settings and turn on the subtitles, then you can use those for valuable information about the world around you. So even if you don't hear something quite right out of your headphones, you'll still be able to see that sure enough there's lava popping nearby. and even which direction it comes from, allowing you to much easier find things like lava lakes, blazes, and so much more. And it's also a good way to catch your friends' pranks before they happen. Really, for how much screen real estate that we're giving up here, this subtitle feature more than makes up for it. We've talked in the past about the fastest way to fly with an elytra, but what about the furthest way to fly with an elytra? Well, if you want to start talking about angles and degrees, you should know that if you fly 40 degrees downwards and then 40 degrees upwards, that zigzagging will allow you to fly much longer distances. And honestly, I just love doing this because it reminds me of Super Mario World. Instead of using scaffolding to build yourself across an area, here's why you should use slime blocks. Because while they might be slow to move on top of, they're definitely not slow to break. Even with just your fist, you can instant mine through slime blocks. I mean, you could do the same with TNT too, but something tells me that slime blocks are a lot safer than that alternative. And then if you fall off your pillar, you'll also have that solution right in your offhand. Place one of those down, and you'll have successfully clutched yourself back to safety. Normally in Minecraft, Steve jumps 1.15 blocks tall, which means he can jump one block with a little bit of clearance over it. But all of that's pointless, since with this Bed Wars tip, we can actually find a way to get ourselves up 3 blocks high, in about as long as it would have taken us for a regular jump. All you have to do is sprint, place a block underneath, jump, and then place 2 blocks underneath yourself. And off of just that simple maneuver, you can do this fast and get 3 blocks of jump height. So if you got 3 blocks, you can jump 3 blocks. I think that's a good trade-off. If you don't yet have the mending enchantment, you'll want to pay attention to this, because when you take those non-enchanted items and mix them together like this, it's not just the 2 durabilities that add up, but rather that repaired item will have the sum of the 2 items' durability plus an additional bonus of 5%. And hey, you did all of that without consuming any XP, which I again think is pretty useful. So if you're getting a lot of armor drops from your mob farm, this could be a good way to bring them back up to usefulness. Since even if these 2 items wouldn't add up to a full durability item, with that 5% repair bonus, it goes right up to clean and pristine. All of which without ever having to touch an anvil. If you have trouble fighting mobs at night, then you might want to brew up some weakness potions. Since surprisingly so, these can render a lot of mobs completely useless. And you'll see as much if we use it on a zombie. They will still do their attack animation, however, you don't even receive a damage tick or a knockback when they do it. And folks, that's on hard difficulties. And it's not just zombies either. This will happen for slime, spiders, and even silverfish. And perhaps my favorite yet, if you use a weakness potion on a cave spider, that'll prevent it from poisoning you too, which really makes these ankle biters seem a lot less intimidating when you use it like that. It can often be tough to make an inescapable trap in Minecraft, especially when they got endgame gear, though the new lava cauldrons might just give us the perfect solution. Now, by themselves, they behave just as regular lava, but when partnered with honey blocks, these become a lot more dangerous. Since you're still affected by the honey's sticky qualities while you're in the cauldron, the player can't jump out of the pot to save themselves. And there you have it. Just with these 2 blocks, we made a trap that you simply can't jump out of. And if you pair this with a fall trap, you'll be sure to stick your foe right in the hot seat. And for their sake, I hope they packed a potion. If you're building your mob farm without an armor stand, then you're doing it wrong. Since strange as it may sound, having an armor stand set up like this in the middle of your mob farm makes it so that when you use a sweeping edge sword, you don't have to worry about wasting one of your swings on dying mobs. Since anytime that you attack a mob with sweeping edge and it dies on the spot, then it just absorbs the attack without doing anything else. But attacking an armor stand alleviates this, and that gives us the best option for crowd control. And it also means that if you're swiping at the armor stand, you're not going to take any thorns damage from any mobs that happen to spawn with it. So if all it costs is a training dummy to help you deal with these other dummies, then that's something I'm willing to take. Now I know that most of us would avoid quartz until we need things like comparators or daylight detectors, but in truth, even if you have no plans of building with it, it's still a good block to mine. Truth be told, nether quartz ore drops so much XP that when you don't have yourself a proper XP farm, this could be a great way to get yourself up into the higher levels. I mean, for just about 20 to 30 minutes of your time, you can go from 0 to level 30 just like that. And even though we're still doing this in the nether, I think you'll still find this is much safer than having to kill the equivalent amount of mobs in the overworld. You want to know the fastest way to trade in Minecraft? And I'll give you a hint, it doesn't use any kind of big system like this, but rather the most useful tidbit that you can know just relies on the spacebar. The way you do it is simple. You click on the trade you want to do, you click the item, and then you hit spacebar to refill the commodities that the villager wants. And just like that, repeating a cycle of going spacebar click, we can completely trade through the villager's options before it needs to restock. And while this gets particularly helpful if you're trying to batch a lot of trades with something like a Fletcher, if you have villagers existed in your world from older versions, then they might be bugged in a way where they can trade infinitely. And then when you use this trick, you're pretty much set for life. So if you got the key on your keyboard, you might as well use it. Before you grow the tree with bone meal, throw an ender pearl up to the sky so that when you bone meal it, you'll land on the top of the tree. At which point you don't have to worry about making yourself a staircase up as you're cutting down the tree, you can just take it all down in one go. Just make sure to have yourself a nice pair of feather falling boots. Otherwise, all the time that you would have saved is going to be wasted having to die to the Ender Pearl's fall damage. I feel like lily pads are an often forgotten block in Minecraft, and more often than not, they just end up being a nuisance when you're trying to navigate through the swamp on a boat. But the truth is, if you happen to grab some of these and keep them in your inventory, then it's possible that if you come across a body of water, all you have to do is just sprint and jump and then place the lily pad underneath your feet, and you'll have yourself an easy way to scale a body of water regardless of how deep it is. Although trapdoors are made out of wood, they don't burn in lava. Yeah, I don't get the logic either, but we don't have to understand it to know that we can use this to get ourselves quite a bit of diamonds. Since whenever you come across a lava pool, all you have to do is just bring around a crimson or warp trapdoor like this, and then flip it open to get yourself the diamonds at the bottom of the lava lake. But just be careful, because even if the trapdoor doesn't burn, your diamonds definitely could. Mud makes for a great building block, so it's something that you want. But getting mud like this is definitely a pain. So rather, we should take after this example and convert all of our mud in a body of water. By placing all of your dirt in a row like so, we can then offhand the water bottle and then hold a shovel in our main hand so that when we hit right and left click at the same time while moving forward, we both convert the dirt to mud and collect it. And while it could definitely take a few tries to get it to sync up properly, once you do, it's hard to look at this comparison and say that you're not saving time. It's a lot more satisfying and a lot simpler. I'll take both of those. Before you spend a single iron ingot on making yourself armor, you should instead craft yourself a shield for the low price of a single iron ingot. Now, while they require you to do more than armor to keep you protected, there's many cases where just holding up your shield can save you from a lot more than diamond armor would. And not just zombies and skeletons, but creepers also get nullified pretty hard by this too, making this a practical choice when you start out. And if you don't yet have the iron to make yourself a shield, then you can still put those 5 oak planks to use in a different way. I'm serious, but just crafting a boat, we can save ourselves from a ton of damage. For instance, if a hostile mob's coming towards you, just place down the boat and it'll be stuck in place, which is especially useful for things like slippery mobs like Endermen. Or if you don't have yourself a water bucket that you can clutch with, just place down the boat, row it off, and you'll be completely safe when you reach the ground. So even if you didn't spawn next to an ocean where you'd need one of these, I think you'll find it'll be just as useful on shore as it would have been on the water. If you build your cow farm like this, you're doing it inefficiently. And instead what you should do is you should bait your cows into a 1x1 hole like this, with a hopper and a chest underneath them. So that, when you continuously breed them, that entity cramming limit's gonna kick in, and after you have 24 cows in your farm, eventually it'll start to kill off the other cows, and you'll have a fully functional automatic farm without even needing that big of a footprint. This Minecraft crop farm might look nice, but it's inefficient, since the way that it is in the game's code, you actually get better results from your crop farm if you plant them in rows like so. And honestly, we should have known that this was in the game from the beginning, considering the fact that village farms are planted this way as well. Maybe those Squidwards have more going on inside their head than just a big nose, since this could be really useful if you don't have bone meal yet to speed up the process in an auto farm. Here's the best way to kill blazes. Since with a looting 3 sword in your main hand and snowballs in your offhand, we're able to throw those at the blazes in the spawner and still get the looting effect applied to them, which without a doubt is one of the cheapest ways to get looting attached to your weapon. It doesn't even take a hit to the sword's durability. And while you can unfortunately only hold 16 snowballs at a time while doing this, with how effective snowballs are against blazes, you're still gonna be alright. And as long as you save some of the snowballs to make a snow golem farm back home, it's also renewable, and you can't beat that. Ever since 1.16, AFK fish farms have been nerfed. I'm not gonna deny that. But what they lack in treasure, they still have a lot to offer. For one, fish. But there's also plenty of experience points that you can get from fishing as well. And when it's this easy to build, there's really no reason to not have one of these in your world. Especially if you place it next to another place where you need to AFK. That way you're activating 2 farms at once, which alone would be a good deal, which is made all the better by how much food you're able to get from this method. Just waterlog a fence, place down a golden pressure plate on top, and then with an iron trap door and a note block placed like so, we'll have ourselves an infinite food farm regardless of where you put this in your world. When we talk about Minecraft traps, cake probably isn't top of your list, but here's why it should be. Since silly as it may seem, if you trap your friend in a case of cake like this, and then replace the floor underneath them with a piece of soul sand, then when we add in a water source block, we'll have trapped them inside of a bubble stream. And just that little bit of bouncing around is gonna make it very tough to break the cake. And at that point, their best way out is if they're hungry, which I've never seen anyone eat a full cake in Minecraft, so they might be there for a while. If you're like me, then you're terrible with a bow and arrow. And unfortunately for us, that makes it really tough to get this advancement for the bullseye. Don't worry, this will make it simple, since all we need to do is put a trapdoor on top of our target block, shoot an arrow right into the center, and then once we run 30 blocks away, we can have either a friend or redstone flip the trapdoor open, at which point it counts it as if we shot the arrow from back here, and we easily get the advancement. And hey, you can do the same for the sniper duel achievement as well. Just switch out the target block for a different kind of target. Easy as that. As soon as you start to get resources that you need to smelt, you should not be wasting time individually putting them into different furnaces. Instead, with the help of the chest boat, we're able to position one of these on top of a bed of hoppers so that it'll evenly disperse all of our items across all of these different furnaces. And just like that, we're smelting 9 times faster than we would in a regular smelter. Change them out for blast furnaces, it goes up to 18 times faster. And then by doing something like Puffing Fish HQ shows off in this design, we can have another chest minecart go around the outside and fill up all of our furnaces with fuel. And don't worry, they store the XP, so when you eventually go through and break all these furnaces, you're still gonna get the rewards that you want. There's really no downside to doing this. And if you're looking to find the iron to build that simple super smelter, your best bet isn't to find it down in the caves. Since of the ways that ores generate since the Caves and Cliffs update, you're actually gonna have pretty good luck finding this up in the mountains. And if I'm being honest, even if that was true, I wouldn't want to go dig inside of a mountain to find my iron. But the good news is, you don't even need to. From just mining iron on the surface of the mountains, you can end up with stacks of the stuff. And not to mention, it's a lot safer than heading down into a dark cave. You can also find coal up here too, just so you have something to smelt all that iron that you're getting. Lighting up your base is great, but you never want to be too obvious about it. Having a torch on the ground doesn't look the best, is what I'm trying to say. But luckily, there is a way for us to hide it. Since if you place down a torch and then have an armor stand entity drop on top of it, then after you suit up that armor stand with whatever armor of your choice, then you'll have successfully made hidden lighting within your base. And while I'm not saying that you should go and spam a bunch of armor stands around your base, that looks more awkward than torches. I think looking for little alternatives like this can really make a difference when you can. Every time that you see a hopper, there's a hidden cost of 5 iron ingots and a chest. But what if I told you that a way to cut down on this is to just use the chest and forget the hopper? Instead, alternating like this lets us cut down on how much iron that we have to spend. And the hoppers and chests will still flow the way that we're used to. So if you haven't yet set up that iron farm, this would be the choice that I'd pick for you. Here's how to turn your allays into a deadly weapon. Since even though they can't equip it, if you give them a piece of Thorn's armor to hold onto, then any mobs that try to attack them will also take damage from that. And as you can see in this example from Razeworks, if you tie your allay to a lead and then have a mob attack you, you might just have yourself the deadliest balloon in Minecraft. But if you do want to try this out, I have to give one warning, which is that even though the allays tend to regenerate a lot of health, there are still a few mobs that can kill them off. So to keep them safe and on your side, you might want to have a couple of allays doing this, that way the damage is getting evenly dispersed amongst the crowd. And if you really need to keep your allays from dying, then your real get out of jail free card here is that if you give your allay a totem of undying, then they can use it just like we would. And there you go, you take them from hardcore mode right back into regular survival. Or if the allay's not the only mob they want to keep safe, then with the fox as well, you can do the same. But unfortunately, they're a little bit tougher to get the totem too. Since for the fox, you need to throw the totem onto the ground for it to be picked up. But once they have it, it doesn't matter what kind of polar bear gets nearby. They'll be left unscathed, and you'll have a very confused polar bear as well. Snow golems melt in the desert. That's not much of a surprise, even Frosty the Snowman could have told you that. But what you might be surprised to know is that if you use a fire resistance potion, that'll allow your snow golems to survive in hot climates. And yes, that even includes the nether, as silly as it might seem. So if you have a couple of these lying around after a piglin bartering, you could set up a couple of snow golems, splash them with this, and use those to help you eviscerate through that blaze spawner. Just get ready for the rude awakening when the potion effect wears off, and you're left with nothing more than a pile of snowballs in front of you. I guess nothing good ever lasts, huh? Here's how to make your boat self-driving. All you gotta do is create a 3x3 area of water, and then place down a fence gate on this third block here. At which point we can break these blocks and cause the water to flow, and we'll have given ourselves an automatic way to drive our boats. If you need to quickly get rid of some fire in the nether, then a good way to do that is by brewing up a couple of splash water bottles. Since these not only extinguish ourselves when we catch on fire, but they can also clear this plus sign shape out of the fire that catches on the ground. So if you need to make sure that your items don't burn, it might help to throw down one of these. That way, even if you burn alive, at least your stuff won't. If you're building a farm, you might want to use mud blocks instead of grass or dirt. And the reason for this is that mud blocks are just 1 pixel smaller in their hitbox than grass or sand blocks. And all that 1 pixel means is that items are actually able to be pulled through a hopper. And there you have it, just with that simple change, our whole farm design just got so much cheaper. And not to mention the rates get better as well. Really, for the price of crafting a water bottle, it's worth doing this at your next farm. Let's say you need to move your pet dog, but you don't want to risk it dying while you're running across the treacherous landscape. Well, no worries, Razeworks has you covered. Since by attaching your pet to a lead and that lead to a fence post, we can use a piston like this so that when the item despawns, then your pet will suddenly teleport that long distance just like that. And through the help of a chunk loader like this one, we can make sure that this design never unloads. That way, with whatever timer you build, it's gonna work just fine. And most importantly, it means your feline friend can travel thousands of blocks, all without having to move a muscle. Can't say I'm not a little bit jealous. If you live in a village, keep this one in mind. Since by attaching an observer or pressure plate next to your bed with a bell getting powered, then we make sure that when we wake up, the bell will ring, and the villagers stay inside long enough for the zombies to burn on the outskirts. Otherwise, without this system, they might go outside, get a few residual zombies, and you'll have a couple of zombie villagers burning out there as well. So if you already killed the iron golem around here, then the least you could do for the villager population is put in this bell system. And then we all avoid the rude awakening of having your village be completely ransacked by zombies. If you're able to find food on land, great, but we're not always so lucky. So instead, you might have a better chance of going to find yourself a river so that you can kill salmon. For one, they're super easy to kill. With just the right stone tool, you can kill one in one whack. And not to mention that even when you get rid of all the salmon inside of the river, when you come back later, they do respawn inside of the water. Oh, and they also have a small chance of dropping bone meal, which can itself be useful in finding yourself a food source that's renewable on land. And look, I'm not someone who likes seafood, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Suspicious stew is a great food source, but it's not great to craft, especially when you can't stack them. So if you can't easily hold on to a stack of suspicious stew, the next best thing is to get yourself a mushroom. And not just anyone, but if you shock it with lightning, sorry little guy, and then feed it the flower of your choice, preferably a dandelion because it's the best one, then that's how you get an infinite amount of suspicious stew. Though worth mentioning is that the flower only works once per. So if you wanted 64 saturation suspicious stew, you need 64 dandelions. Luckily, those are easier to farm than the other suspicious stew. It's a simpler trade-off. Skulk sensors are very useful, but they're also very noticeable. But if you want to keep their function while losing that fidelity, then it's worth noting that by waterlogging a skulk sensor, then they'll be silent, but still behave normally. Now granted, this doesn't make them entirely discreet since the sound waves are still visible, but as we can verify from the Minecraft subtitles, there's no sound that's given off from the skulk sensor itself when we do this. But when you're trying to use a skulk sensor for a hidden trap like this, then anything you can do to make it less noticeable is gonna go a long way. After all, it just takes one little detail for them to notice and the whole operation to go belly up. And for the price of a water bucket, I'd rather stack those odds in our favor. Whether you're playing on easy or hard mode, mob proofing is an essential chore on your to-do list. And while light level can work, that isn't as much of an option in the nether. So if you're trying to get piglins to stop spawning in your travel tunnels or next to your fortress farm, then an easy to get solution is a moss carpet. Now initially, it might seem ridiculous to try and put vegetation next to lava, but apparently, moss carpet doesn't burn, making it pretty ideal for the lava landscape. Though I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that even though this doesn't burn next to lava, flowing lava will still break these the same as flowing water. But as long as you keep that in mind, you'll be safe. Or safer, at least. If you want to fix your item stream, consider adding a slab in place. Since as DocM showed off on Hermitcraft, just adding one of these in can make it easier for our items to stack together. And now the bone meal entities will wait until they have enough mass to eventually get pushed over. And that'll also help you to get some more space in between your items, which is definitely a plus when hoppers move so slowly. And perhaps the real icing on top of all of this is that when you have multiple item entities combined into one single stacked item entity, then that'll help to reduce lag as well, which for the price of half a cobblestone block, it's hard to say that isn't worth it. Fire makes for a great decoration in your builds, but fire spread could also ruin your builds. So how do you find a happy medium? Well, the answer comes with Soulfire. Since with this, even if fire tick is enabled, it doesn't matter, because Soulfire will never spread. And while you do obviously change out the color for this example, that's a small sacrifice for keeping the rest of your base safe. And come on, it's not like the blue fire looks terrible anyway. I really think that we're making an improvement on both fronts. And at the very least, you can build that new fireplace in your house without having to tear your hair out. We all know bone meal can be a very useful tool to have, but sometimes getting enough of it can be a real hassle. So to keep your farms fueled and supplied going forward, how about we get a bit more creative and turn stone right into bone meal? I know, that sounds crazy, but as members of the community have found out, we can use the new moss functionality to turn stone generators into bone meal farms. And just like that, we've got a self-sustainable bone meal farm that's sure to provide plenty more for your farms in the future. In Java Edition, we trade with piglins like this, but on Bedrock Edition, we can do it so much faster. And the reason for that is that if you place down 2 observers to create an infinite clock, and then attach to that a sticky piston with a gold block on top of it, then when you throw the gold to the piglins to trade, you'll see that they're trading every single tick that's possible. So if you've got enough gold to fund it, I'd say pay up. You get yourself quite the show. With a pillar of scaffolding like so and an observer up top, we can effectively use this to send redstone signals upward like so. All we have to do is have a trapdoor underneath the top of the scaffolding, and that way when the legs on the bottom one update, that signal will move across the top of the system until eventually it's detected by an observer and we get the redstone signal up there. But though I will mention that unlike using walls for this, the higher the scaffolding, the longer the input delay. But for the simplicity and compactness of this design, I think it makes up for this trade-off and then some. Now, nether portals are a necessity, but I could do without the zombified piglins spawning in them. So if you're like me and you're also sick of those unwanted visitors, then with just a turtle-like place like so, we can bait them away from the portal. So sure, it doesn't stop them from spawning, but I'd rather treat the problem than learn how to live with it. And as long as the turtle egg isn't placed on a beach to grow up, it's not gonna hatch and the baby turtle won't object to it either. And if you take the setup from the piglin farm and switch out the gold block for a lightning rod, then when you throw a channeling trident on top, every time that it goes up and down, it'll strike lightning right on the source, giving you an infinite lightning farm, and a workplace hazard if you step too close, which you can then use as a mob converter of sorts. Or if you're crazy, you could do like we did and kill the wither with lightning. It just might take a few attempts. Having chests that we can put in our boats is a great thing, but you might be better using a llama instead, since not only will a max storage llama still let us have some storage, but we can also put a friend on the back of the llama and keep up the same number of seats. That way we're not trading containers for company. Don't worry about getting yourself an iron sword. Instead, with just 3 stone and some sticks, a stone axe will do you much better. And if you're able to critical hit and time your attacks just right, you can easily kill off a lot of mobs. And partnered with that shield that you just crafted, now you'll be covered in both the offense and the defense, all without having to get more than a single piece of iron. When 1.14 rolled around, Bamboo gave us a very solid way to defend our bases from enemies. With its weird hitbox, we're able to walk through just fine, but the mob AI struggles a bit to make it past the chutes, which is great, but a bamboo barricade doesn't fit in every build. So luckily, we've got something a bit more metal to use instead. Through the help of the copper lightning rods, we can place a couple of these down and get ourselves a mob-proof gate. And hey, if you think about it, they basically turn into an electric fence as well, though maybe that's better at fending off zombies than creepers. But with a cat to keep those away, then this safety solution's definitely worth a try. If you're playing on Bedrock Edition and hold down Shift and Jump at the same time on your keyboard, then as you start placing down blocks, it's possible to build a tower 16 blocks high, all without ever leaving the ground. Which at that point, why would you ever need scaffolding? This seemed to do the trick just fine. At first glance, this jump seems impossible, and really, it should be. But the truth is that if you happen to turn 45 degrees exactly while you're midair in the jump, then that'll let you jump 2% further than you would normally, which sounds imperceptible, but it's enough to make this jump. Though I can't stress enough how difficult this is to do. I mean, that's why we featured in the impossible skills video. Without the help of something like a mod like Tweakaroo, I'd have no chance of pulling this off. But if you can, it just might help you in a pinch. Whether you're playing a game of Manhunt or trying to prank your friend, everyone loves a good trap. And with the help of the Dripstone Falling Entity, we can make a particularly effective one. As it's coded, a dripstone falling from a height of 40 blocks will do the maximum amount of damage. Though, as soon as it goes through an end portal, that fall height doesn't reset. But rather, whoever goes through the gate next to me, quite the deadly surprise on the other end. Even with the diamond helmet, the odds are that your friend's still gonna get skewered the same way. So if you're looking to make the end off limits, then a couple of stalactites might just finish the job. You can't see it, but there's a hidden ladder here, and it's not one that we made with sticks, but rather with the way that vines and maps overlap, we can mix together an item frame and a map to make our vines completely invisible and the map climbable, which could make it easier to do something like building out your large map on a wall, or better yet, for a hidden entrance. And you don't even have to go that far. You want a reason to do this? Now none of your friends can rotate that map art to make it look bad, since the vine's hitbox is slightly larger than the item frames. And when you got destructive friends like me, that's worth the price of a mission on its own right. Instead of using chests, use barrels instead, since for one, they're cheaper to craft, they cost you 1 less plank for each recipe, and they're also great for small bases, since even if you have a solid block on top of them, you're still able to open them up. And while we can't double their size like we would a regular chest, it's also important to note that if you get a lot of these, they aren't rendered as entities like the rest of the chests, so they cause a lot less lag if you build yourself a barrel monster instead of a chest monster. Now I know that composters don't seem like the most helpful of items, but that might just be because you're using it wrong, since what you need to understand is that the first item that you put into the composter is always guaranteed to fill up the first level, and that's regardless of the item that you're composting. So if you want the maximum efficiency when you're using your composter for bone meal, first put in an item with a low chance of composting for the first stage, and then use higher chance items like pumpkin pie for the rest of the way. That way you're saving these higher chance items for where they're actually useful, which might not make composters the most useful block yet, but even if they're not useful, at least you know how to use them now. Most players think of doors as just that, a door. But folks, there's so much more than that. Since in Java Edition, you can use these doors for some pretty important things. Like if you're underwater, you can place one of these down and have yourself a standing safe bubble of air. Or you can also place one of these down and use it to confuse hostile mobs that are coming towards you. For example, if you're in a cave and a skeleton starts shooting at you, place down the door and the mob's probably gonna lose track of you. And if you flip the door just right, we can actually use this to scale up a 2-block tall jump, helping you get out of a cramped space or up to a new one. Terraforming a biome is not a simple task, which is too bad because there really are some great results to changing around and creating your own custom biome. So why don't we try and find the easy way out? So for the sake of an example, how about we try to take the gray hues out of a mushroom fields biome and make them a bit more colorful? And for that, moss is a classic candidate. Since this block loves to replace the ones around it, all we need is a ton of bone meal and plenty of dedication to get the job done. And just like so, we can transform fungus to flora and make this biome a lot more lush to see. And hopefully the mushrooms will like it as much as we do. If you're looking for the fastest way to mine in Minecraft, then you're gonna need this on your leggings. Since even though dive mining's become less popular since its inclusion, with the addition addition of the Swift Sneak enchantment, now it's worth doing again, because the name's misleading. It doesn't just give you a swift sneak, but also gives you a swift crawl. And with Swift Sneak 3 on our leggings, we can get some real speed while we're mining in a 1-block tall tunnel. So as long as you don't have claustrophobia, it's worth adding to your to-do list. At the very least, it gives you a reason to go down to the ancient cities, because if we're being honest, the recovery compass isn't worth it. Instead of planting your crops outside, you should tuck them down in a cave. Now, I know crops need light and sunshine and all that, but that's actually the point. Since if you were to plant your crop farm underneath a redstone lamp like this, then when it's time to harvest, all you gotta do is flip a lever on that switch, and all of the crops will be harvested in an instant. At which point, you can turn back on the light, plant all your crops, and get ready to do the same again next week. Making Minecraft builds automatic can often be a tough problem to solve. At the very least, it's not usually that compact. But Drip Leaf might just be the golden opportunity. Now, clearly, when you stand on these for too long, they're sure to give way to gravity. But what you might not know is that if you stand put just like such, then it's possible to use this as a time trap door and put the player right into a crawl position. So if you took that time to wait around, you might just notice that the entrance to a crawl space base was right underneath eye level. And folks, this is just barely scratching the surface for an implementation, and I'll leave the rest for creative people like you. Ender pearls are great for teleporting. That's literally what they're there for. Usually that's just to places that you can see. However, if you were to line up your crosshair just like this and throw an ender pearl right at the base of the 2 blocks, we could actually use this to walk through solid walls. And not just with the transparent blocks either, since if the wall is only 1 block thick, you can walk through just about anything this way. Just keep in mind that you are going to take some damage from the ender pearl, but for an easy way to get out of dodge, this could save you a chase scene. In a lot of ways, deserts can make great locations for bases. You don't have to worry about constant weather changes, and there are so many different sandstone blocks that there's plenty of variety to choose from. Though their oasis qualities leave something to be desired. I mean, who would want to live in a place with grass like this? I understand it's accurate, but most of the time, it just looks gross. Though while the grass color map isn't changing anytime soon, we do have a new green block to play with. Through the help of the moss block, we can make desert grass that actually looks green and lush. And hey, the same goes for using azalea leaves instead of the regular ones. And needless to say, this is what you should be growing. Instamine tools are usually something we associate with late game. I mean, most of the time, you're not even getting this without Haste 2 and Efficiency 5. Or you could just use bone meal. No joke, with the new moss feature, it's possible to turn stone and deep slate into some of the easiest blocks to break in the game. And from there, you don't even need a netherite pickaxe. Just a stone hoe is all you need to dig these blocks. So as we start spending a lot more time clearing out the depths below, it might be worthwhile to bring some of this compost down in the caves. And besides, you can't even insta-mine deep slate with a beacon, so this is no doubt the best option to use. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?